I feel there is a popular saying that the problems are global, but the action needs to be local. So each and every individual in the world have their own responsibilities to do something good for the environment. And I personally, from my capacity as an individual and as a professional, have a lot of opportunity to work and do something good for the people. So that's, I guess, the basic reason why I'm working in the environment. See Bangladesh's geophysical location or geographical location, it's one of the tiniest country in the whole world. We have roughly 144,000 square kilometers. We have almost 16 crore people living in this country, one of the most densely populated countries in the world with very limited resources. And the way, if you see Bangladesh economy shaping in recent decades, a lot of pressure is coming from both local and a lot of also other external pressures are coming from regional and global perspectives. In a local scale, Bangladesh's major problem, if you have a look at even in and around Dhaka, you can clearly understand what are the problems. 4 rivers surrounding Dhaka city, Turak, Balu, Shitalok and Buriganga, all have been declared as ecological critical areas by the government of Bangladesh. And when a government declares some areas as ecological critical areas, if you have a look at Buriganga, in many places of Buriganga, the basic parameter of life is dissolved oxygen. And the level of dissolved oxygen in many places of Buriganga is absolutely zero. So that gives us an indication what is the intent or extent of environmental pollution in many parts of Bangladesh, is particularly in pollution hotspots. If you have a look at Dhaka's any other problem, for example, solid waste management, waste has become a major issue even in our political regime. It depends whether a city corporation mayor will be elected or not, based on their commitment, how they will be managing their waste. In recent times, we have seen so. In terms of traffic congestion, in general, if I have a look at bring back a global picture, Dhaka is one of the worst livable cities in the world, just after Damascus. And I understand the perspective of Damascus because Syria is going throughout war, but Bangladesh is not a war zone. I do believe there are a lot of other cities which are much unsafer or unsecure than Dhaka, but still, because of all these environmental factors, that is also significantly contributing Dhaka to score so low in that index. So the problems are enormous. If you have a look at our biodiversity is degrading day by day. Per capita forest area, Bangladesh is one of the lowest in the whole world. Per capita forest protected area, Bangladesh is one of the lowest in the whole world. We talk a lot about Bangladesh's achievement in the Millennium Development Goals. Bangladesh have done very well in many of the indicators. But if you have a look at MDG 7, which is on environmental sustainability, Bangladesh could not reach its desired targets. So there are a lot of environmental challenges from the local level that we are facing. However, a lot of regional and global phenomena are also creating a lot of problem for Bangladesh. In a regional perspective, water sharing between the South Asian nations, particularly with India and upper riparian nations like, for example, Bhutan, Nepal and China, is a major issue in Bangladesh. We can clearly see that the impact of water shortage, particularly in the dry season, and that really affects our life and livelihoods of many of the people in Bangladesh, millions of people in Bangladesh. In a global perspective, climate change has brought in a new dimension altogether, and this has now been considered as probably the major threat in terms of Bangladesh's existence. We are talking about if sea level rises by 1 meter, the projection says 70% of Bangladesh will go underwater. Millions of people will be displaced from their life and livelihoods. Salinity intrusion because of the sea level rise is causing a lot of problem in the south and southeastern part of Bangladesh. Roughly 30 million people will not be able to access safe drinking water. So all these challenges altogether putting Bangladesh in a jeopardy. We are consistently having a consistent growth rate, and in all the economic projections, Bangladesh is considered to be one of the top countries in the world. Even during the economic recession phase, Bangladesh has maintained at least 6% growth rate, which is very remarkable. Recently, World Bank has declared Bangladesh as a low middle income country. So in terms of economic factors, we are doing really well. However, climate change can totally change that trajectory. if there is no global commitment to control climate change, and countries like Bangladesh and the low-lying countries will suffer a lot, and that will really jeopardize a lot of the development effectiveness that we had in this country over last 3 decades and so. Yes, there is a lot of readiness in terms of addressing climate change, both from local, regional, and also from the global level. From a local perspective, if I put it that way, Bangladesh is one of the first countries in the world to have a Bangladesh climate change strategy and action plan. It was a milestone kind of document. Many of the developed nations in the world doesn't have a similar document like that Bangladesh came up with. Second to say, Bangladesh government has created its own, local funding mechanism for addressing climate, what we call the Bangladesh Climate Change Trust Fund. And Bangladesh government, Bangladesh is not a advanced country, it's still developing nation. Bangladesh government has put $100 million per year, particularly to address climate change related issues. In Bangladesh, there has been a donor agreement also in a form what we call the Bangladesh Climate Change Resilience Fund. So these are the kind of efforts that's already going on in Bangladesh, and people of Bangladesh are fighting for centuries, and in this region particularly, and we have liberated from a country also through that process, and we are also familiar of fighting against any kind of climatic extremities. Bangladesh has been recognized and Bangladesh has been referred to be the country to look into and how to address this kind of natural disasters. But said so, adaptation to climate change has a natural limit. You can adapt up to an extent, and after that there is no adaptation. So for that reason we need a global agreement where the major developing nations, developed nations and the emerging economies who are most producer of global greenhouse gases, which is principally responsible for these changes, needs to be halted. First of all, even before coming to a common platform, a common understanding is the most important thing. How all of us understand climate change. From a climate scientist or an environmental scientist or environmental professional, we have certain level of understanding. Whether that understanding is also, the understanding, whether they also have a similar understanding, like for example, political will. For any, successful commitment, unless and until there is a political will, it's very difficult, because ultimately those are the people who runs the country. Scientists can provide them all the relevant science related information which will enable them to make the right decisions. But whether a right decision will be made or not, that depends on the will. Coming to the business sector, the major pollution source throughout the world is basically businesses, different kinds of businesses that we are having. So unless and until the businesses also see climate change from that perspective, that will be something difficult to achieve. Having a global consensus, all citizens agreeing to something common, that I guess having the common understanding will be something most critical in my point of view. When you have a common understanding, it's really easy to act. Unless and until you have a common understanding, with a common understanding, different people will have different responsibilities. It's not that whatever the responsibility of the government is, will be the responsibility of the private sector. And the responsibility of the private sector will not be the responsibility of an NGO or a CSO or people in the academia or in the development partner or a general citizen. But the understanding needs to be there. So that's the most critical thing, and I personally believe there is still not a common understanding, not only in Bangladesh, also in a global level. I believe that informing people about all these changes, like the way you have started this newsletter, to inform people, that this kind of efforts coming from young groups and youths like you is something very encouraging. But there has been a lot of consensus and a lot of understanding has increased in recent times in Bangladesh around climate change. But I really don't believe there is a lot of also understanding, particularly in the business sector. As I said, I do believe it is very important that there has been a lot of understanding in the government sector. However, in the business sector, I don't personally think there has been a lot of interest. You can still do your business in a very sustainable way. We are talking about green growth and green development opportunities. Particularly even in Bangladesh, we know that there are a lot of examples which are emerging, which really gives us an indication that you can do business in a way that really will not impact environment, or will do very less impact on the environment, and can address climate change issues. There are very classic examples that we can follow.
Exactly.
If you can really show people and the businesses the incentives of doing these things, I think that dissemination, that this same thing can be done in an economically feasible way, that dissemination hasn't been done properly. There is a lot of good examples also in Bangladesh,
Exactly.
that we really need to showcase. I think that will be the key thing in my point of view to change the game. Behavioral change is key to achieve those things.